Here we go again. Here we go again. It's Monday now. It's been a couple of days, and it was a busy weekend. It was a busy weekend. It's funny. It's been really sunny here, and sunny with these squalls of wind. And so, after a number of days of actually very hot, sunny weather, unseasonably hot for April, typical in this weird climate change world that we live in. Suddenly Saturday, it's time. My friend the Silver Seal and I, we're going to go play some music down at the gazebo, which is this little headland place. And it's like cloudy and windy, and rain is just splattering at us. And we still played a little bit, but it was so intense. And as we were playing, the wind is there. It's like a November day, and there was a mood there that I was really getting into, and it was a really good zone there. And this wedding party came. How sad for these people getting married that they chose to get married. They're getting married at the beach or at the headland or someplace. They went and got married, and the one day in weeks, and it's stormy and cloudy and windy. They're still having a great time. And thank God, the music didn't bother them too much. But, I broke a couple strings because it was so intense. The intensity was so alive that, if I want to break in strings, it means that it's just this, explosive energy, right? So anyway, we went there and we met a friend of his, and away we went and we had some drinks. So yesterday was a bit of a write-off, It happens. It happens sometimes, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Because you must make space and time in your life for things, for your stoke. That's what I've been thinking about since then is the stoke, the juice, the juice. Because I talk a lot about turning on, and when I'm talking about loving, healing, evolving, dreaming, talking about my healing journey, it's a question of flow state for me, tapping flow state, and being alive, being aware, being ready to just get into the flow, And I say stoke, and stoke comes from the surfing culture, The stoke is the wicked magic tickle that just comes through you of finding your sacred balance on that immense wave and to be one with that power. That's the stoke. And although surfing is one of those stoke heavy experiences, the stoke is anything that excites you. Anything that excites you, truly gives you joy. Whatever it is, you've got to go for it. And you know what? I'm going to just go into the taboo subject that includes sex. If your sexuality is your only stoke, well then, by God, pursue it. Pursue it completely. If that's your stoke, that is what you should be doing. My stoke is in that direction, yes, but music is also one of my supreme stokes because it gets me all the way to the top, if you will. And that's where I want to begin today. Stoke. Get the stoke. Find the juice. The juice. It's a liquid thing. If you're too dry, something's wrong. Dryness and liquidity, What is the quality of the ancient temperate rainforest, or in particular, the ancient tropical rainforest? What is the quality? It is wet. It's moist. It is cloud heavy with thick moisture just condensing out of the atmosphere. It's where humidity is in the tropics. And what happens when that begins to get broke down, when the angry engines of capitalism get a hold of it and start gnawing away at it, what happens? It dries out. It dries out. And the process of those angry engines is desertification. We look at North Africa now, and it's just a desert. It's just a dry, desolate place. Saharan Africa. What I've read and what I've learned is that was one of the breadbaskets of the Roman Empire. They just farmed to desertification, basically. And so, or the Middle East, these places back in the cradle of civilization, it's called, in the 7,000 years ago when civilization was beginning, there were these garden paradises, Sumer and Babylon and Persia ultimately, Now just desert places fueled by oil, which is sort of mysterious that there's so much oil there. Anyway, I'm just rambling far afield here, but the focus that I'm really dwelling on is the liquidness of life. I mean, what are we? 80%, 90% water in our bodies, and yet our lives are this dry, desiccated experience. And I'm using dryness and wetness in a kind of metaphoric sense to suggest that your stoke is a kind of wetness. You know what I mean? There's a shine in your eyes. There's a wetness. When emotion is overwhelming you, you cry. Why? You're just made liquid. You're wet. You know what I mean? I don't need to, go to the sexual angle to talk about where the wetness is there, finding that liquid flow together, And think about it. Just think about it, And then wherever you're dry, wonder at that. Oh, I got to have money, so I'm going to be dry in my work. It's like, well, then you're spending your entire life serving an idea that doesn't serve your being. What serves your being, And that's a different quality. What serves your being rather than your ideas. We live in a society where there is absolutely no exposure to what actually serves the human being. And once you begin to tap into that, how to get a hold of yourself. Almost zero manifestations in our culture. I think about my own childhood, I talk about all my own mistakes, and they're all my mistakes. I own all my mistakes in life. And yet to heal is to see where the decision process came from. And that leads me to, the traumas of my childhood in particular, my early childhood, very early childhood, because I got an unusual childhood, like I was the product of a 15-year-old pregnancy in 1970, which was very uncommon, and I put up to adoption. So I'm one of those abortions who was let live. I'm one of those people who is literally an abortion let live. My birth mother went through the experience that a book was written about called Gone to an Aunt's, which is to say many young girls who got knocked up in that early time, 50s, 60s, 70s, they get pregnant through misadventure when they're very young, which I think is interesting because there you've got this sexuality and this desire happening, and a completely repressed society that can't even think twice about sex in any way. All I'm saying is that physiologically, when women start menstruating, that's nature telling them to reproduce. And just a little bit after that, boys, their engines start going on. And let me tell you, as a former teenage boy, that is a hell of pressure that nature puts into us, at that age. So, and it's not just men or boys, I should say, it's girls and boys in their adolescent stage, socially and culturally. They're still children, and we've got to protect them as children, and yet physiologically, nature is pushing the children to be fucking. Let's be honest, And we got to recognize that, not to just allow them to be fucking like crazy, because in our society, in our culture, there's no emotional, psychological growth in order to embed those powerful feelings and emotions, right? But it should be understood, at least. It should be understood and seen clearly that that's what menstruation is. Menstruation is nature telling a girl to go and get pregnant, to put a nicer word on it, right? And boys are driven crazy by the testosterone because it is driving them to make women pregnant, and we should recognize that. Funnily, I'll just throw this in here. I'm actually going somewhere with this, so be patient with me. I'm just enjoying the journey with you. So it's funny, like with a number of women I've known, I've always joked that like the monthly cycle, I always say it's like a big bitch coming into town. Big bitch meaning nature, because nature comes in, and think about all that happens when a woman loses that egg. It's uncomfortable, it's painful, it's often got a lot of feelings around it, and it's as unique as there are women. I'm not trying to like make it all the same, but I mean, like, it's the same thing. It manifests completely different for each woman. And for me, it's like, I've always thought that the period is like nature punishing women for losing that egg. Because nature is very simple. Nature speaks in terms of pain and pleasure, right? So of course, sex feels really good to us because nature's like, do this all the time. And so we enjoy doing it, right? On the other hand, where's the pain? For boys, I mean, we get off scot-free. We just produce new crops of sperm every day, Our only responsibility as men is to get all our boys home. Every man is a general of billions of sperm. Our only job, our only mission, each man, as the badass general that he is to get his boys home. Get them home. And where's home? You know where home is. Home is right there inside the woman who agrees with your mission. And she's getting rewarded by all the feelings that happen around that process. But when she doesn't do that, nature punishes her every month with a period. Well, it's not always every month. It's usually every month. Every lunar cycle, And I just want to dwell on this because I find that our sexuality is magical and mystical. Because, I mean, think about it. When women cohabitate and they're together, they will begin cycling in the same pattern. Like, think of that. Like, their bodies and their physiological process, their sexuality, so individual, so unique. And yet, somehow, their energy fields come into the same place, and then they begin cycling together. I mean, that's telling us something about human beings. Women teach us that. And also, I don't think it's any coincidence that the period is very uncomfortable because it's Mother Nature coming around and saying, "You lost another egg, bitch. You get busy." You know where the pleasure is. Go follow it. Because if you don't, this is coming at you. And hey, I totally understand. Like, we don't want a baby every month, right? But the thing is that's our society talking, not nature talking. Nature is very simple. Nature is like, use all these eggs. I've given you these eggs. Use all of them. I mean, in a way, that's because in the natural world, many babies do not survive to be grown up. It's only in the safety of our hive civilization that we've got such a low infant mortality rate, right? But anyway, I'm just speaking in a kind of riffing, creative sense about about sexuality, because this is the engine. This is the engine that pushes us around. Oftentimes, is our sexuality, and it's a step up from our basic survival, right? And in the West here, in North America, there's very little need for survival pressure. But our culture pushes survival pressure on us because it's the only way to keep us enslaved, And how did I begin all this? I began all this by talking about finding your stoke. What is your stoke? Even if your stoke is just sex, then pursue the stoke. You know what I mean? Whatever it might be, I'm a musician. It's my stoke. I do it as much as I can, I also love like writing and storytelling. I enjoy being with my friends in the pub. I am also sexual, so I definitely enjoy that aspect as well. Pursue the stoke. If you're not pursuing the stoke, and what is the stoke? What's the feeling? It's the feeling of like liquidity. It's the feeling of flow, the juice, soaking. I mean, that's where the delight and the ecstasy is that wetness, that stoking. I tried to use the metaphor of the rainforest where everything is so wet and humid. It's just, it is something. And on the opposite side of things, no life can live in a desert. Or if it lives in the desert, it's got to sustain its water as a precious, precious thing, So your stoke is the liquidness of your being. And you got to get liquid, get into flow state. See, what I'm trying to do here in my healing journey now, in this point, is speak about in a kind of a sort of a tactile way. I'm trying to get to what healing is. Healing is being liquid. Healing is is letting those drops, letting the juice flow inside of you, and then you just become this oozing with goodness, this moist liquid thing, just in flow state, flowing, liquid being. Because energy is a flow. Energy is just like a liquid sliver of intensity, until you try to frame it, and then it's a particle and you know where it is. But when you just get into it, it's pure flow, and that was a little brief analogy into subatomic physics and the whole quantum world. I mean, science is just showing us what we should already know. I don't understand why I'm not using this in our lives more, except to say that we live in a culture which, because it is the leftover of colonialism, it's all about slavery and domination for the very few, So, I mean, any question of healing and health cannot exclude our debased and grotesque culture. It is grotesque, and I'm a part of it. I'm like, but I'm a part of it, but I'm no longer a part of the problem. I'm tuned in, turned on, and dropped out. The turning on part that was getting in trouble. But getting in trouble just showed me, like, well, what have I been doing? I needed help to activate the things inside myself that I know are true, that never once in all my life, from my family to my school to the world out there, ever helped me to activate, and that's my failing, because I couldn't find it, although I was striving for it all my life. I needed help. But also, where is the help to be found in our society? Where is it? So finding your stoke, key first piece, right? So let me take it into a different dimension now. What I discovered when I was working in mental health and addictions, I'm still working in mental health and addictions, but I'm just speaking reflectively about past experiences in the field. When I have been working with mental health and addictions, what I find is that you find people who are deactivated. They have lost connection with the world that we all share. And instead, they've created elaborate and intricate connections to either a substance effect, which is an inner chemical state, but activated by an external object, usually a substance, but it can be a process, right? It can be overeating, it can be exercise addiction, which was my thing. It can be workaholism, it can be gambling, you name it. It's an object in the external world which complex compulsions have attached in order to sustain some inner capability of surviving this crazy world, right? So you can see that whole process has got nothing to do with the world. It's got to do with this idea of surviving it, which is based on disconnection. In the same way, mental illness is, again, a complex set of inner compulsions, delusions, delusional ideas, the belief in voices, whatever it might be, the magical thinking, But what it is it's not a magic which is the result of a healthy flow in harmony with the world. It's a fracture and a thing that's come in between them and the world. So I've said this many times, right? When you're dealing with the crisis of severe and persistent mental illness, when you're dealing with the crisis of severe substance use, that is the essential condition that you are in the presence of. And so for me, I approach, with as little preconceived ideas as I can. I spend a lot of time, cleaning myself out. You could say that because I've had some time off work, this here that I'm doing with you is a process of keeping myself cleaned out. I'm keeping my surfaces clean and clear, you know what I mean? Whereas when I'm working, it's more something that happens in the evening. So then when I get back to work, this morning situation I'm doing with you right now is going to change, and I'll probably do it in the evenings, but who knows? That's the future. For now, I'm here. I'm acknowledging that this is what my discipline is right here now, is that I am sustaining my presence and my reality with you right now. Because if I didn't, I would just collapse and run the risk of getting abstracted inside. Cultivating my stoke and my flow state, though, which is ultimately what I'm talking about, is what I'm bringing to the field. And so even though I'm filtering my stoke and my flow state through the very astringent filters of my harm reduction, my trauma-informed care, my motivational interviewing, my acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a sort of derivative not a derivative, but it's an expansion on CBT. These are all the processes. And not only that, but all the philosophy, all the spiritual seeking in my own life, all those filters and the very astringent filter it is in the field in healthcare, I bring to the clients, to the other human beings who are experiencing this broken state based on their compulsions, whether it's outside or inside. Okay, so what I discovered right away is that people really respond to just positive presence, to stillness. You bring still, attentive presence to someone, allow them to be who they are, then it's like the suitcase, the overstuffed suitcase that's inside them springs open, sproing, and you get this spewage of whatever their addictive process, whether it's some inner ideation, whether it's an outer fixation, right? But over time, if you're not judgmental with someone, and they learn to trust you, they learn to be in the space with you, then you can actually have a dialogue about what's going on. But what is the dialogue? The dialogue is then, being a practitioner, the dialogue always leads to, what can I do for you? What can we do to make you happier? But happiness isn't an idea. It is something where, it's hard to describe approach, but like when I'm in my stoke, I'm genuinely interested, I'm curious, I'm present. I don't know, I've just got an interest. My spiritual seeking has led me to a place. I'm interested in everyone. I'm interested in what people got to say. I'm interested in what's going on. When I find that someone is in hardship, there's an authentic interest in me to get into it with them and find out about it. Oh, why are you so upset? Why can't you? What's going on here? What's going on there? Not in a judgmental sense, but in that authentic seeking. Like, I relate, my life was destroyed for years too. What's happening, And there's a kind of magic in that. I don't know how to say it, but like in that interaction, people can begin to allow themselves to emerge a little bit, right? And the thing is, with the people who are very, very much stuck to the point of being very broken, I try to use the analogy of injury rather than illness, because if you talk about illness as a model, you're tempted to think about mental illness or addiction as a disease, and that's a mistake, because then you say, well, it's a disease, it's a genetic material process, and you are subtly and unconsciously, because of your own presuppositions, condemning that person to be a victim of their disease, which is to say they're helpless, they cannot do a thing about it. And it's tempting to think that way. And of course, some of the woke people will say, well, that's just, it's the kind thing, it's not their fault, right? That the problem is that we must approach with the spirit of human agency first and foremost. We must look at mental illness or at addictions as a kind of injury, triage that injury, help them understand it, help them try to heal it. You know what I mean? If you have an injury, think about severity of injury here. Have you twisted your ankle? Have you broken your ankle? Did you break your leg? Did you break your back? Did you break your neck? I'm using physical injury as an analogy, because sometimes, I've met people in the field whose mental illness is so severe that their psychic mobility, because if I'm using, remember those breakages I just mentioned, right? Twisted ankle is maybe a month off your feet, and then you just slowly get back into things. You break an ankle, you could be 6 months off your feet, depending how severe it is, and then you got to rehab it. Broken leg, even longer. Broken back, you got to change how you live to cope with that damage. You break your neck, even more severe level of change in your life to adapt to it, right? So if you can just hold that in your mind as a metaphor for psychic mobility, If a person has been crippled by mental illness, they have lost their psychic mobility. They can't make any moves. They can hardly live. They've got to be in the hospital. They've got to be cared for because they've completely lost connection. They've lost their footing, if you will. They can't move anymore. They're just completely derailed by the inner process, right? And in addiction, it's the same thing, but it's got an outer object, but it's created the same effect, right? So first of all is to get to that person and help them feel comfortable, help them feel safe. Because again, I'm saying injury, but injury in a psychic sense is that existential lack of safety, that depressive, negative idea about the world, or paranoia as it often is. Paranoia and fear is usually the thing which drives any manifestation of mental illness or addiction. Fear of something, future, past, whatever it may be, trauma induced, of course, right? So anyway, as time went on, I've shared music with clients. I've talked philosophy and metaphysics with clients. I've been engaged in just like helping a client enjoy a good meal. You know what I mean? These are ways in which you help someone just feel more human and help them be more in the moment. And so as that began, I began to understand insight as a tool. Because really, when you're helping someone feel okay, that's where insight begins. When you start feeling okay, And if the person feels okay around you, then you can begin talking about the things they really like. The things they remember liking before all the shit came down on them, Then a real dialogue can begin. And at that point, that is when it takes a lot of time. Because the longer that you are persisting in something bad, the longer it takes to possibly let go of it, if you can at all, right? And that process of insight begins with feeling good first. I'm talking about stoke. I started this one talking about stoke first and foremost. Liquidity, the juice, the flow state. You know what I mean? When I'm meeting a severe and persistently mentally ill person, they're so heavily sedated, right? Whereas if it was 100 years ago, I'd go into like a psych ward and the people would be running around probably just in a state of hysteria because there was no medical treatment, right? The only way we can have conversations with people right now is because they're sedated to the point where they can actually be present with you a little bit. You know what I mean? And in a perfect world, someone like me would come along, begin talking to someone, anchor them in a good place, and slowly but surely expand on that insight, their insight, which is to say, sharing insight. I share my insight, they share their insight. We're going to come to delusional ideas, we're going to come to delusional thinking, we're going to come to things. Can they let go of those delusional ideas? That's the question in every therapeutic connection. Can you let go of this thing? Can you develop a healthier way to be in this moment, And at that point, you get to see how badly injured that person is. How far can they recover, I will say that in our system, most clients that I've met have come to the point where they do need to live in a place where people are caring for them. It's called licensed care in our world. And in our town, where we've got some of the best care for people with mental illness and addictions anywhere in the country, and therefore probably the world, outside of maybe like Finland or Europe somewhere, right? Where a lot of research is going on, that we need more licensed care. Licensed care means 24-hour staffing, sometimes 24-hour nursing, meals are provided, there's a lot of interaction. And the importance of that is that when people have the severe and persistent mental illness, when they're on their own, they tend to go to extreme and unhealthy places. So when you embed them in care with people who care for them, they will do better. And a lot of clients simply need that. And what are we talking about? We're talking about a kind of surrogate family environment. These are like feral people. They're people who've just gone wild and they've just lost every connection to whatever we consider to be healthy and normal. Myth of Normal, I'll say, because that's Gabor Mate's latest book, beautiful book. Read it. Myth of Normal, Gabor Mate. Read all of his books and learn something about yourself and about our world. But licensed care is essentially I mean, there's nurses there, so it's definitely clinical. But like if you think about being embedded in a place where people are feeding you and caring for you, that's like a surrogate family, you know? And a lot of times being around the people with severe and persistent mental illness, there's this essence of like you are filling in many roles that are missing for them, you know? Sometimes it's parental for me, because you know I'm a man. It's parental or avuncular, which is to be like uncleish, you know, or a friend or a brother or something like that. You know, like you stand in all these different roles where that's been a complete lack for them, you know. So this is a long one today, but I'm still building towards something, because as you begin to explore someone's insight with them, and insight is at the same time stoke, feeling good. You know, someone's excited to see you, it's because they like the feeling when they're around you. And I know that with the connections I make with clients, they're happy to spend time with me, because magically, I can't explain, I'm happy to be with them as well. You know, I just am. I just like being around people. And when I can be around people in an authentic healing energy, a loving energy, I feel better. And you know what? They feel better. You know, that's why in my stories here, as I've been describing to you, like I love being out there and encountering people and having these interesting moments, you know, because work and mental health and addictions are people who are really hurt and damaged, right? But no one in our world escapes the trauma effect. Nobody, you know, just because you could pay your taxes doesn't mean you're out of your mind, or doesn't mean you're sane or healthy. It just means that you've learned to cope really well with all the shit that's happened to you. You know what I mean? So when I'm talking about mentally ill people, I'm not talking about a special category of people. I'm just talking about people who need maybe not excessive, but an elaborate level of care, a high level of care, right? But I think everyone needs a certain level of care, because we are in a world of society, a society which is heartless and predatory, right? Because it is, let's remember, it is the descendant of colonialism, which is about violent domination and slavery. And look at our society now. It's no coincidence that those are the driving forces, you know, which is to say the overlords, you know, it's the meek, it's the cowardly, those rich business people who hide and make all the money, right, are pushing all the engines of the state now to enslave everyone and to push more products. And we're going to denigrate the environment, and God knows what's going to happen. Yes, I understand. It's a terrible picture, right? It's a terrible picture to the extent that like anything that's going on inside of someone, if you want to talk about mental illness, like I sort of began with this, you cannot exclude the social aspect of it. I mean, and when I'm talking about people, when I'm meeting in the healthcare system, let's change that lens slightly to people who are in the streets, right? This mental illness and addictions is just, you can't untangle it. And in fact, in the field these days, we often can't even get to someone's mental illness because complexities of addiction have overcome it. You can't even approach the mental illness because the addiction has become so powerful, you know? And so you get a lot of people in the streets, it's like they're addicts, but they also have got a lot of trauma and a lot of internal emotional problems and mental health problems, right? And of course, you know, it's a kind of rot and a decay in our society when you've got so much areas of town in which it's just this lawless domain of street people. And of course, there's a lot of stigma. And what is the stigma? Oh, what's wrong with them? You know, people paying their taxes and judging them and stuff, right? Even though they don't see their own blind negativeness and judgment going on, which is their own fixed condition, right? Well, people in the streets are people who were never taught how to take care of themselves, ultimately. They're never taught you know, their family life inevitably is full of trauma, and they didn't learn how to take care of themselves. To a certain extent, I never learned how to take care of myself properly, and therefore I could never be in the world properly. You know, it took a lot of hardship and a misery to get me there, right? And I was very fortunate in a comedic kind of way. Getting arrested, as I said, set me free from all that, you know? But it's made me very empathetic to the stuckness, and not just the stuckness of mentally ill people, but the stuckness in everyone I meet, you know, because our society is stuck trying to hold on to an outmoded way of domination, slavery for the very few. And that's, you know, That is the crisis that we live in. This is why that attitude feeds down through the middle class, and they're going to hold on what they want. Well, no one's going to fuck with my shit, right? So they keep on perpetuating their servitude like zombies, basically, to their vampire overlords. I'm using a metaphor there again. There's no vampires, there's no zombies. These are just human beings, predatory human beings who take everything and give nothing. I'm calling them vampires. They're the 1%ers. They're just the vampires, right? And then there's the zombie followers who just think it's all in their own interest too. They're the zombies. They're just following the ideology without thinking, right? And then we get down to the realm of the hungry ghosts, as Gabor Mate would call it. And these people are in such crisis that we have to help them. They are the canaries in the coal mine. The plight of people on the streets is the indictment of our society, because we're saying they don't count and they don't deserve care and they don't know how to care for themselves. And that is where we come in, right? And I'm speaking in generalities. Let's take it back to individuals again, right? Because everything is a relationship. When someone is broken from the world, it all has to come down to relationship again. And so in the therapeutic, it's all about the therapeutic engagement, the therapeutic alliance, right? The rapport that you can create individually. Because as a worker at my level, I become almost an ambassador for society, you know? Come back to us in a way. I'm interested in you. Let's meet in the middle. What's your insight about this? Why is this all happening, right? And so then that therapeutic dialogue begins, and that's the chance to help that person gain insight. And as they get insight, then all sorts of interesting things begin happening, right? So as I proceeded in my journey, I started to have this dream about a group, an insight group. I wanted to create an insight group because I found that when clients got together, even though they're all radically different and stuck in their own very separate inside universes of breakage, right? When they got together, if they can help each other, they're I don't know, like this, there's a magic there. Something beautiful happens. And so I first conceptualized it. I called it the Dream Farm. This is a few years ago now. I want to have a Dream Farm group. It's about insight. It's about cultivating insight and being a resource together, you know? And in our field, there is a group. It's called the Clubhouse. They put clubhouses all around. I don't know if it's internationally, but it's called the Clubhouse, and it's similar to what I'm talking about. It's a safe place where anyone, mental health, addictions, like the autistic spectrum, Down syndrome, kind of developmental disorders, right? They can all just go there and be welcome, which is what everyone needs, right? That is similar to what I'm talking about, except I really coming at it with the mentally ill people. I was really interested in a kind of support group, which has got to be about insight. Because if you can support each other, that means you're sharing an agreement about something. If we can support each other, support itself is based on agreement. And agreement is insight in terms of how we are relating to each other. And so in my individual therapeutic relationships, I was striving to develop that into a group, a support group, a group which I am facilitating because I'm creating all of these individual relationships of insight and support. And yet I felt and I know that coming together as a group is a powerful healing tool. And so I envisioned the Dream Farm. Every time I've mentioned the Dream Farm, it gets no traction because it sounds very fanciful, because it is a creation. And it has to be a creation, because you cannot heal someone. You cannot help someone heal without creative visualization. It's creation. It is, to return to what I said at the beginning of this sit down here, stoke. Helping someone find their stoke, And you find people in mentals whose stoke has been radically absorbed in voices and delusional ideas and delusional thinking, grandiosity, paranoia, you name it. Their stoke is completely co-opted. It's a question of trying to bring them down into a relationship moment, helping them understand that, I don't often use stoke language to talk to clients. When I'm in the field, I use various stringent clinical terms. But here in this milieu, I'm actually putting in the creative energy, loving energy, visualizing that really is at the heart of it. You're helping someone visualize their lives again. And it's very amplified in a group setting. So, but as I've gone along, dream farm, it's like now, as I've been speaking to you, I've got dream farming and dream hunting because I do two different kinds. This is dream farming right here. Just, think about cultivation. Let's cultivate it. Cultivate dreams. If you recall my mantra, loving, healing, evolving, dreaming, if we cannot cultivate dreams, let's bring it right back to loving. Let's just be love. Let's be in love together and see what happens. Healing is usually the mode then, right? But dreaming is ultimately what we're talking about, when you're able to visualize your own life. And it's true with the mental health, with the mental illness clients. Oftentimes they need licensed care. Many do. People just need to be cared for. And if we can care for them, they will live happier and more complete lives because they need to be in a family environment. And that's what licensed care is. It's like a surrogate family environment with people around who are caring for them, but also medical staff. Psychiatrists are there just to help embed them in a safe place, right? So these are people who can't do any dream hunting. They can only perhaps aspire to dream farming, but they're beautiful, magical people at the same time. And so that's that work, right? And so my vision now is I want to create something. Because if you think about when I talk about my own healing journey, when I talk about my stoke, particularly in music and my own spiritual seeking, a lot of times I come to this ritual element. And ritual is a hard thing to talk about because it leads you to some kind of cult activity. But ritual is just something where you put your ego aside and say, this is more important than anything I'm thinking about. Your doubts are gone. Your worries are gone. Something that is ritual is something where you're saying, this is more important than me. It's more important than my thinking. It's more important than my body. It's more important than anything else is going on. And we need to be very careful with that, of course, because love must be the ritual. Love is the ritual. Loving is the ritual. Because if you practice ritual without loving, it becomes atrocity. It will. So love is always got to be first. That's why loving, healing, evolving, dreaming is my primal mantra, right? Secondarily to that is ritual, which is to say you've got to find something to give that love meaning. And there's that part where our society has nothing. Our society is the antithesis of that. All we have is religious systems, which are vending ideas, which aren't helping. And so when I talk about the dream farm now, or the dream hunting, really, I want to create a dream temple. That's what I want to do. And we'll see what I can do with it, right? But I'm going to try and create something like an actual location, right? Where we play music, where people can come. We can have happenings in a 1960s style. I want to welcome the mentally ill people there. I want to welcome the addicts there. I want to welcome anyone who's a seeker, who's seeking spiritual process. And the reason I want to call it the Dream Temple is because I don't want it to be doctrinal. I don't want it to be a system. I'm not here to do anything but to cultivate someone's love for their own life and their own stoke. The Dream Temple is a place where we're going to come together to generate our own stoke, to find our flow state, to be loving together and to be generative and supportive with each other and explore our insight and explore the things which are in between us and our joy and the juice of our lives. So that's what I've been coming to this whole time on this one, is that this is my new creation. I'm sharing it with you here because I'm saying it in words to try and take responsibility for it. I want to create this out there in the world. And I'm going to. I just don't exactly know how it's going to work out right now, but I'm working on it. And that's going to happen in Victoria. Somewhere is going to be a dream temple, and it sounds cultish and wacky, but in total transparency, all it is loving, healing, evolving, dreaming, creating rapport, creating community based on rapport, which is a community of insight, a community of stoke, nothing but stoke. Bring your stoke, bring your joy. Let's talk about it. Let's find out about it. Let's support each other in it. That is Dream Temple. That's what we need. Not church, Dream Temple. Temple is a place where we go to celebrate our spiritual process. Dream Temple is celebrate this dream that we're living, this dream that Creator has given us. I'm not talking about anything doctrinal. When I talk about Creator, I say Spirit because there's no idea for me. I have no ideas when I talk about Spirit. It's the unmanifest. It's the unmanifest which draws us forward. And it's the unmanifest, which I seek to embody in the dream temple. There's a place where we would go to have happenings, where we will go to create our own creations, whatever that might be. I'm a musician, so me and my music friends will be there playing music. It's also going to be a space there where musicians can come and play. I want it to be a place where people can just go and shelter or just feel okay, you know? It will be the dream temple. We'll see what happens. And if you've been listening all the way through this long one I'm giving you this morning, it's as simple as stoke. It's as simple as finding your stoke. It's as simple as getting into your love and being, your beautiful love and self. And so, that's my offering today, the dream temple. Think about it. Think about what I'm saying. Think about it. You don't necessarily have to come and join the dream temple that I'm creating, but make your own dream temple, your heart. This body should be your dream temple. This body is my dream temple, and I want to expand it out to include other bodies so that we can share this dreaming reality together. And on that note, think about it. Be well and keep reaching. Reach out and make your dream temple happen today.